story in the Washington Free Beacon today. No family members were employed in more than 16 million U.S. families in 2016, or about 19.6% of families, according to the data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It goes on to say that the number of families with nobody employed increased by roughly 19,000 from 2015 to 2016, although the percentage slightly declined from 19.7 to 19.6. What's going on and what can we do about it in this country? Joining us on our Newsmaker line to talk about it is Alfredo Ortiz. He is president, CEO of the Job Creators Network. Alfredo, how are you? And welcome to the show.
Rod, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing
well.
well.
It's Friday.
Yeah, thank God it's Friday. That's for sure. When you heard these numbers and looked at this, I mean, 19.6% of the families in this country, nobody is working in that family. That's a frightening figure.
It's deeply troubling. And on a macro level, this means that the labor market still has weaknesses, so we need to work on getting people back to work. And here's the thing, though. The problem isn't the number of available jobs. It's a skills gap that exists in this country, and it exists between those who need a job and what career openings are required.
Does this cut across all groups, or are there certain groups that it's hitting harder than others?
Definitely it's hitting harder our minority groups, unfortunately, Hispanic, Black in particular. But here's the thing, Rob. There are almost 6 million job openings in the U.S., about half of which pay $50,000 or more per year. And a lot of these jobs require slightly more than a high school diploma. Unfortunately, we're not spending enough time talking about that, and policymakers really need to address the skills gap that's preventing these unemployed families from seizing these available great jobs. But unfortunately, all we're hearing about is this fight for 15 that goes around, and what we've come out with is the fight for $50,000 per year jobs. Because again, we don't have a wage gap a wage gap issue in this country. We've got a skills gap.
How do policymakers, or how do individuals, or how do communities address this skills gap? I mean, what needs to be done in your opinion?
That's a great question. I got a couple of examples for in South Carolina. It's a state-run apprenticeship program. There gives businesses a tax credit for each apprentice that they hire. The employees learn while they earn a living, and there's no reason we can't expand these ideas elsewhere. And another example that I have, I spoke to a manufacturer in North Carolina recently, and he's got an incredible idea. What he actually ended up doing is creating a couple of high schools himself out of his own pocket, decided that he needed to start basically a feeder program for his businesses, and it's a fantastic apprenticeship program. So these kids end up, once they're selected in the program, they end up having jobs, and these jobs pay $50,000 per year or more.
Let me ask you this. Donald Trump, of course, one of the pillars of his campaign and his administration early has been deregulation. And I'm always concerned, are employers reluctant to begin apprentice programs or bring people in, train them, knowing all the regulatory hoops that they have to jump through? Is it that difficult, in your opinion, Alfredo?
Now, another great question. One of the things, fortunately, that this administration understands is that over-regulation is killing our businesses, not only our large corporate businesses, but in particular our small businesses. And I think the president has done an outstanding job in rolling back a lot of these regulations that are holding employers back from doing exactly what we're talking about. And we need to do more. We're hoping that when the Department of Labor gets its leader in place, we're going to see more activity in this particular regard, where we're going to keep rolling back these kinds of regulations that, frankly, are hurting the very people that are trying to help.
What about the idea of, we've had this debate before on the show. People have talked about this. The idea, Alfredo, that everybody needs to go to college. Yet you have a lot of people out there who, aren't interested in college, and maybe vocational, technical, whatever we want to call it anymore. That is the direction they should take. How do we convince American workers go in that direction, because there are jobs out there?
Again, another great point, and what we need to do is get more of this kind of information out there. We, frankly, hopefully get our message out, this Fight for 50 campaign out, which, again, if folks are interested, go to fightfor50.com, and you'll have information about how we do that. But we need to have the media talk about this more, because all we hear about, unfortunately, is this Fight for 15, which is adding a buck or two, for example, to minimum wages. But the problem is that kind of activity is really only hurting people. It's hurting employers or small businesses, and frankly, it's hurting a lot of the youth of today and people who really need it. And the thing, though, is that this really is a solvable problem. Let me give you a quick example, if I may. just 0.5% of the hourly workforce. That's 395,000 people out of over 77 million people are adults earning minimum wage. But we got 3 million jobs, for example, that are good-paying jobs, openings in this country, they could fill right now if they had the right skill set. So we need to have the media not talking about the fight for 15, but they need to talk about the fight for 50, because that's what we need to do. We need to give people portable skills that they can take from job to job to job, because, again, if you just add an extra dollar or two to a minimum wage job, guess what? They're still in the minimum wage job.
But, Alfredo, why does the fight for 15, not 50, get so much attention?
Well, unfortunately, I think there's been about $85 million, if I remember correctly, that's been spent against that campaign. And I'll be honest, we don't have $85 million to spend on our campaign. That's why we appreciate the opportunity, for example, to get on your show, and we hope other people give us the opportunity as well, because this is where we encourage the people who are on the Fight for 15 campaign to come over to our campaign to help us with this, because this is where we can really make a difference for the people who want to make a difference for themselves. I mean, everyone starts somewhere. It doesn't matter if you're the president of the school board or the president of the United States. We all had a first job before we got our current job. But unfortunately, this fight for $15 minimum wage is killing off these starter opportunities. And it's also teaching people that you can't get a raise unless the government passes a law.
Alfredo, great chatting with you. Thank you. Interesting information. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Have a great weekend.
All right. Joining us on our Newsmaker line, Alfredo Ortiz, President, CEO of the Nonpartisan Job Creators Network, talking about the fact that the new numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics showing that nearly no family member was employed in more than 16 million families in 2016. All right. More coming up on the Rod Arquette.